All right, let's get started. Form data. So by the end of this lesson, I hope that you too will be able to send form data from forms using the form data object. So let's review forms real quick. Talk me through how a form works. Just a regular old form, no JavaScript. With no JavaScript, how does a form work?
With form tag and like HTML.
Yep, so
Labels and a submit button.
we do form tags. We need a submit button. Two different ways to do that, but the one that I prefer is input type submit. Okay, what else is part of a regular old form? Need some inputs. So make an input, give it a type. What else do I super need on an input? Name. Name is the important one. Okay. Any other stuff that goes on an input?
You need like method and action in the form.
Hey, I like that. So I might make method. Anybody know what options I have for method on this?
Like post, catch, can't really.
I'm with Samantha on this one. Post and get are the only two methods that you can put in a form tag. There are ways to do puts and patches and deletes and all that kind of stuff, but we're always doing a little bit of like JavaScript magic to make that happen. Post and get are the only ones that are actually allowed. And there's almost no, 99+% of the time, you should probably be using post if you're doing this. So I got a post. Oh, and Adam, what was the other one? Action.
That's just your backend.
So somebody else, what goes in the action? Yep, some URL. Where am I sending this HTTP request to? All right, so form, method, action, the input, the name. Anything else that goes in the input? So if I was binding a value or something like that, I could do that. The value is going to be what ends up coming out of the form. What else? Could be an ID. What's the benefit of having an ID on a form input?
In the label, you can put like for, so wherever you put it takes you straight to the bottom.
Exactly. So if I want to link a label to this, it needs an ID. Anything else that I would typically see in an input? If you want to make it so that you can't submit a form until something has a value, you just put required on it. All right, so that's forms. So the only thing that's changing with the way that we're going to do forms from now on, no method, no action, and we use the submit event on the form. We attach an event listener to this form's submit event, and then we handle it all manually. So let's talk through what that looks like. I need to get the form element. I need to listen for submit. And then in the handler for that submit, this is the most important part of this. If you don't do this, you're going to have a real bad time. What do I have to do first? Prevent default. Thank you. event dot prevent default. What happens if we don't do that? Yeah, it tries to do the regular form submission stuff. And if you don't submit this shit in, it sends it to the exact same URL you're currently on with a get method. Okay, so we prevent the default. Now we need to like make the request. Since the browser isn't doing it for us, we need to tell it how to do that, but we can fetch put, we can fetch patch, we can fetch delete, we can fetch anything we want. We need to make the request. And then this isn't a requirement, but for UX reasons, it generally kind of is. We need to reset the form. Cool. This is regular old DOM query selector stuff. This is regular old event listening stuff. This is just calling a method. This is just calling a method. This is fetch stuff. We're pretty familiar with that. I'll add one in here for extract the data. That's new to us. But very little new stuff we're actually doing. All right, so I'd like you to code along with me on this. I'm going to call this Bagel Client. All right, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. Huh? Bagel Client, doesn't matter what you call it. And I'm going to make an index.html, an app.css, and an app.js file. Empty files. Then I'm going to start serving up this folder with Light Server. And then in the index.html, doc type, HTML. If you were looking for a vocab word today, that's called a pragma. App.css. You're going to give it a head and a body. We're going to give it a title. Bagel Shop. We're going to give it a meta char set. We're going to give it a link. Adam, what happens if I don't do rel cell sheet? It doesn't work. Also doesn't work if you're bringing in Bootstrap, huh? The href is going to be // we can just use regular / app.css. The bottom of this body, we're going to make a script tag with a source of /app.js. And just to sanity check ourselves, welcome Amy, we're going to put an h1 up at the top. So if we did all this right, I should see Bagel Shop up at the top. Sick. All right, let's go ahead and make the form. So we don't need a method and an action. Let me see if I can find the API I built for this. I can't remember which. Bagel API, there we go. There's a type and a rating. 2 inputs. Type is text. Name. Type. We can say it's required. Why not? And then we can do a label. Placeholder is pretty common for that also. Serves a very similar purpose. So we want a rating for the next input. That's a number. If we want to, we can put, since it's a number, we can also do like a min and a max. So it's an integer 1 through 10. So we say that the min is 1 and the max is 10. And if we want to give it a default value, we can do that also. Value equals 5. And since these are getting long, format matters. Be clean. We can break these into separate lines. Helps the readability a lot. We need a submit button. Needs a value. Add bagel. And that's our form. Sweet, looking as shitty as ever. For Old Man Coberly's sanity, you can go to app.css, make all your inputs display block. You can also make everything box sizing border box. And we can make the form 300 pixel, so width 300 pixels and the input width 100%. Let's actually make that 200 pixels. That's a little bit better. And then we can say these have a margin bottom of half a rem and a padding of half a rem also. And all of a sudden, doesn't look like super shit anymore. Yeah. So, let's give a sec to get caught up. Give you a minute. We have a bag already. We will do about our forms of work at JavaScript, and now we will use the steps that we follow with JavaScript. Yeah. Anybody else need help getting caught up? Yep. This guy's a bladder, am I right? One of the admissions people yesterday was like, Kyle, congratulations on your award. Like, you know what I lost? I haven't thought about it at all. Thanks a lot. Summit from admissions. All right, give me a thumbs up and we're ready to move on. Oh yeah. You get them on different lines that you put in the display block. You're a wizard, Harry. You good, Stacey? All right. So we can sanity check our app.js file by just throwing an alert in here. If that works, that means that our JavaScript was successfully wired up. It's good to do this because several of you had issues linking your style sheet to your page. That happens all the time. Sometimes I forget to put the rel in there, which will mean that won't work. And so I'm doing all these things, and I think I've suddenly forgotten how to do CSS because nothing I do is making any difference at all. So it's a good sanity check to just make sure that these things are talking to each other. All right, so in our app.js, let's take a look at the steps again. We're getting the form element, we're listening for submit events on it. In the handler, we're preventing the default, we're getting data, we're making a request, we're resetting the form. So step one, get the form element. You know how to do this. What do I do? Cool. And if you want to do it Kyle style, I like putting $signs in front of elements so that I know they're elements and not just numbers or strings or objects or something else. Well, there's two different ways we can do this. If I put the script tag here, the DOM is loaded because it reads top to bottom. If I want to put the script tag in the head, which is semantically more correct, what do I need to do? Document dot, what was it? Add event listener. And then put everything in there. So we can do that too. If you put your script tag at the bottom, it does the same thing. It's what most people probably do. Although I kind of break out in hives a little bit every time I do it because it really should go in the head. But this is fine. Good catch though. What else? So I've got the form. How do I listen for submit? Yeah, how do I create an event listener? Yeah! I'm listening for submit. Cool. And then let's talk about this for a sec. I want to put both syntaxes up there just so you see them both because they're the same. These two things are equivalent in case you were confused from seeing both of them. But what is happening here? I'm calling a function with event, or what is that? Yes, although, see, very careful about vocabulary. We haven't invoked it yet, so it's technically a parameter. It's a parameter when we're defining it. It's an argument when we're calling it. So if I do function sum A and B and return A plus B, and I call sum 1 and 2, A and B are parameters, 1 and 3 are arguments. Minor academic distinction, but we're growing up a little bit, should use that correctly. Cool. How is this working? What is happening with that?
Why are they both working?
No, like what is this shit? A function? Aren't I like calling a function here?
You wait for that action to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And just using that function.
You tell me what to do when you get
Yeah. So I could also put that back. I could also do something like submit handler event and do something like all three of these are equivalent. Yeah, Miss.
So, I know that we talk about factoring and how we want our code to look like this. Is the third one better than the other two, or?
Yeah, I kind of think so. These both of these are called inline anonymous functions. There's a benefit to them. The benefit is that you don't have to come up with a name. Only two hard things in programming: cache invalidation and naming things. So anytime we can not have to come up with a name for something, because you come up with a name that sucks, and most of them suck, you're just like lying in slow motion. It's something that's like barely true now, and as the program develops, just becomes less and less true. And so not coming up with a name is like a legit benefit. Also, we're keeping what we're listening for and what we're doing in the same place. All right? I feel like this, there's a couple things I like about this. One is that I'm saying what I'm doing, not how I'm doing it. So if I don't care how I'm doing it, I'm listening for a submit event and then I'm doing whatever. And so in this case, it might be add bagel. When the form is submitted, add the bagel. That's elegant. How do you add the bagel? Well, I just look at the function definition for that. And if I don't care, then I don't need to see it. So that's a benefit. This also has better better errors, because it'll say add bagel through an error rather than like an anonymous function on line whatever through an error. This is a little fucked up, but you can actually, I don't know if you realize this, you can do that. You can give those anonymous functions names. You can't. These are technically like lambdas. Lambdas don't have names, so you can't. So yeah, I'd say that this tends to be more readable. There are instances where the inline function will probably be more readable, especially if it's like a one-liner or something like that. You're just adding noise by like abstracting that into a function. But yeah, I'd say I like that better. Good question. All right, let's just look at this on the screen for a sec. Those three add event listeners are equivalent. Any questions about that part of it? Cool. So we've done get the form element. We're listening for the submit. Prevent default, you say? How do I do that? It's really that easy. So right now, if I just wail on that submit button, I got to put something in there. Nothing happens. Doesn't try to submit. In fact, I can put a console log in there to prove it. If I do that, oop. Cool. There we go. We're wired up. Got the form element, listen for submit, prevent a default, extract data. This is where that form data object comes in. So to do this, we take event.target. What is event.target in this case? Whatever was clicked. Or in this case, since we're listening to a submit event, it's the thing that emitted the submit event. Only thing that can emit a submit event is a form. So I can say, check this shit out. Event.target. And there's a form element. And all the DOM stuff that goes along with it. So I'm going to take that event.target and I'm going to make a new, I'll call it bagel data equals new, capital F form, capital D data. I'm going to invoke that and send it event.target. What this does, it makes key value pairs of names and values from the inputs.
That's what FormData target event is.
When you pass event.target into a new FormData object, this is a little magic machine that keeps tracks of names and values. To get them, it's not just an object. I can't do bageldata.type to get the bagel type, or bageltype.rating. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but not much. If I want the type, that's bageldata.get type. And now type is going to be equal to whatever the value of this name was. Sit with that for a sec. There's other ways to do this. There's lots of other ways to do it, actually. We could do something like const.bagel type equals document.query selector, and I can get the input with name equals type dot value. Actually, that'll even give me, yeah. That'll get me that also. And then I can do one of those for the rating also. That feels sloppy to me. This and this do the same thing. I feel like that is a lot more descriptive and more semantically correct. So if this is the only way you do it for the rest of your HTML career, works fine for me. All right, so we have extracted the data. Now, just gotta do something with it. So maybe we do a fetch to, what did I call this? Bagel API FIS to Bagel API FIS dot herokuapp.com/bagels. I think that's where I put it. Yeah. So I fetch to bagels, and since we want to make a post request, we got to add that options object as the second argument. Method post headers content type application/JSON body JSON.stringify type rating. Let's talk about this. This is like pretty dense with shit. You could also write that like this. What is happening on line 17? And Brave Soul talking through it. Careful. Good guess. Opposite. This. Ooh, careful. This is an object. You can't send objects over the internet. All HTTP understands is characters. It's not even strings, really. So this is an object. We need to turn it into a JSON string. JavaScript object, JSON string. JSON is always a string. JSON is always a string, the entire thing. It looks exactly like an object, but it's not. It's just a string that can be turned back into an object. And this is the real power of this. We use JSON with Node backends. We also use it with Rails backends. We also use it with Java backends. We use it with Go backends. We use it with everything. It is the default data transport format over the web. And so I can write something that looks like a JavaScript object, and even in something like Go or Java, where their objects don't look anything like they do in JavaScript, it can turn it into one of their objects. That's fucking cool.
Do you know what content type and
Yeah. So content type is an HTTP header. This is saying, this is the type of data that I'm about to send you. It could also be plain text. I could be sending you, I don't know why, but HTML. I could be sending you binary image data. Here's the type of data that I'm about to send you. Have you seen one of these before? Another one like text plain, text CSS, text JavaScript, image JPEG. Absolutely. This is a really common format. This is worth knowing. Let me know what it is. This is a Mime Type. Mime Type is category specific thing. Let's take a look at some common Mime types. So structure is type and subtype. You can also give it parameters. So the top level types. Application is a catch-all. That's why JSON's in there. Audio, font, image, text, video, model. Multi-part, message. Those are top level types. These are full MIME types. Text plain, text HTML, text JavaScript. These are all the different image types. Image, PNG, bitmap, GIF, JPEG, SVG, TIFF, WebP. Audio types. Video WebM, video OGG. FormData, multi-part / FormData. Those are all MIME types. So this is a hint to the server that this is how you should try to understand the thing that I'm about to send you. And since I have it pulled up, this is the back end. This is giving this back end the ability to parse JSON data that I send it. And so if it doesn't have that tag, it doesn't even try to parse the data that I send it. Great question. What else?
Is there a reason why we don't stringify headers and stringify body? Why don't we just write like the JSON body in based on what we release the method?
Great question. So the reason why is because this isn't sending a headers object over. This is saying what key value pairs. It knows to do that already. There's no other format for headers possible. Body could be binary data, could be any number of different formats, could be XML. And so it doesn't care, it just needs to know what type should the backend try to read it as and what are the characters. If you send it just an object, it doesn't know how to do that. Now, a lot of people, myself kind of included, think that's a cop-out because pretty much every other library that handles HTTP requests for you just does this automatically. But that's not how to write the spec. Also a good question. What else?
What are some of the other things you do with FormData besides doing what you got?
That's really it. We can look at the docs for it. These are the things. We can add something else to it. We can delete something that we don't actually want to send, or we can just not read it. We can get a list of all of the things that we have, with something like entries or get all. We can check whether or not something was included. We can set a new value for something. Get an array of the values. And there you go. That is everything you can do with FormData. Oh, that's kind of neat. You can pass it directly to URL search params constructor if you want to generate query parameters in a way that Form would do if it was getting a simple GET submission. Dope. What else? So in our steps, we've extracted the data, we've made the request. All that's left to do now Once that's done, do event.target.reset. And that'll clear out the inputs. Pretty cool. So you don't have to do this, but I'm going to read from the bagel list and put them on the page. So I'll have UL class bagels. Then over here, I'll say const bagels is document query selector dot bagels, and I'm going to make a simple get fetch to get a list of all the bagels that are there. So this will be bagel-api-fis herokuapp.com/bagels. And then when that completes, parse the response. And taking what we just learned about JSON, we're not parsing something into JSON. We're not turning it into JSON. We got JSON back, and we're turning it into a JavaScript object. This takes a JSON string and makes it an object. And then with the, let's see, did I wrap it? No, I did. Cool. Then with the bagels that I get back, I can bagels dot for each bagel, maybe make it a DOM element, document dot create element li, and then set li's text content equal to bagel.type dash bagel.rating, and then append the li. All right. Do I got a list of LIs? Something I didn't like. So it says there's a network error. So I look at the network tab. What's the matter, you? What kind of response do I get? No response. It's because I typed the URL in wrong. Cool. I got some bagels back. Nice. I got an array of them. UL is not defined. It's because I called it bagels. Cool. There's my list of bagels. I'm assuming this is some failed student form submissions. Dope. But if I make a Mez special, 10 out of 10 in my book, and submit it and refresh, there's a Mez special. There we go. Could have just said blueberry. And that is how you add something. Sick. Yeah. If I were going to refactor this, which now I'm inclined to do, I'm going to make a create bagel that takes in a bagel and returns like that li. And then Then I could mash this together for create bagel, bagel, and do the same thing. And might even make a add bagel function that takes in a bagel and does that. And then this just becomes add bagel. Dope. And then if I make this add bagels, holy shit, look how readable that is. I could make parse JSON that takes an HTTP response and returns HTTP response.json. Whoa! Look how readable that is. Does it still work? There we go. Questions? Yeah, there's not a whole lot to it. Sure. Why not? So, especially since I have all these handy functions now, I can take a bagel and it'll add it to the page with that add bagel function. Why don't I use that? Add bagel with type and rating. And I'm going to call this the Toby special. It's not as good. It's pretty good. And then, oop, that looked like that refreshed. What did I break? I broke something. So you can tell it broke, and this is a good debugging thing. Check out that query string up top. What does that tell you happened? Something was not prevented. The default was not prevented somehow. Not sure how, but that's what a form does when it makes a GET request. It just throws all the names and values in the query string. So something about this didn't get prevented. Oh, did anybody catch it? It's kind of insidious. Use the same function name twice. Add bagel, add bagel, add bagel. So call that submit bagel. And so I'm going to change this to prepend so it does it first. All right. The Toby special. For your patience, I'll give you an extra point. And there's the Toby special. Optimistically rendered. Yeah. So, after I extracted the data, I took that data that I extracted and I passed it to the add bagel function, which is this thing right here, which takes the bagels UL and prepends the result of create bagel, which takes in a bagel, makes a list item, sets its text content, and returns it. Hell yeah. And the thing I'm really happy with on that is that add bagel function also gets used in add bagels, which is how my initial fetch is working. Lack of repetition. Yeah. So I added this UL down here to display the bagels in. By the way, the thing I just did is basically the Mod 3 code challenge, FYI.
Could you send this video to our channel?
Yeah. That's some confidence. Actually, I'll do you one better than sending it to your channel. Put it on the site, where it goes. Cool. Other questions about this? Stacey.
Just one more time, I always mentioned really good.
Yes.
Can you explain JSON.certify and first JSON again?
Mhm.
How we should be describing what's going on? Because JSON is a string.
Yep.
And I don't need it.
I'm tired of saying it. He wants to give it a shot. I'll tell you if you're right.
Well, I can try it.
Cool. Hit me.
But, okay, so JSON is always a string.
Yes.
So when you are in your fetch the method header body, the body is the JSON that's certified. So that JSON needs to be turned.
Ooh, careful there.
Hmm.
That JSON doesn't need to be turned into anything.
The JSON cannot be read by.
That object needs to get turned into JSON. Actually, everybody, check this out. So I'm going to call this new bagel. And it's going to be an object with type and rating in it, and then we'll just use that. We'll say new bagel, and that's new bagel. Let's take a look at this though. So if I console.log new bagel, and I then console log new JSON stringify new bagel, let's take a look at the difference between these. So I've got good bagel. It's not great bagel. All right, look at the difference between those two. This is an object, this is a string. It's the same shit, but take a look at the object prototype in there. These are all the different things that we can do on an object. The string, is prototype of, has on property, all this shit. It's magical. It's programming stuff. JSON isn't. JSON is just some characters.
If you did object string native JSON, or is there more things?
No, that's a great question. So if I'm gonna do this in the console, A is key value. All right, so there's A, that's the object. If I do JSON.stringify A, I get that. If I do A to string, I get that. What else you want to know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. While you're doing that, Stacy, let's give it another shot.
Okay.
What's the difference between JSON and object?
JSON is string.
Mm-hmm.
Object is string.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're stringifying the object, it takes the object you are sending to the server and makes it into a string because the server can't do anything but strings.
Correct.
And then on the other end.
Careful on that. Your server can do all kinds of things. The network can't send anything but characters. So I'm saying this through the wires. The wires aren't JavaScript. The wires are beeps and boops.
Okay.
We can beep and boop characters pretty easily. Objects, not so much. Cool.
The network can't do that.
Yes. The HTTP is just characters.
And then on the other end, if you are getting a response
Mm-hmm.
from a server
Mhm.
through the network,
Yes. It was
what's
going through
being
the
sent,
it was going through the network, so that means it was
it's a string. And so to that you have to parse it back into an object, it puts it into an
Mhm.
object. And then you do something with the object.
yes. You can think of this like dehydrating something for shipping. Can't ship liquid or something like that. So we suck all the water out, and then I send it to you, and then you add water back in. That's stringifying and parsing. Stringifying, that's not like a programmer term or something like that either. That's not what I would have called it. I would have called it JSON.serialize. Those two words mean the same thing. Serialize is turn something into a string. More questions? We got the form element, we listened for submit, we prevented the default behavior, we yanked out some data, we made a fetch request, we reset the form. We got the form element, added an event listener, prevented the default, extracted some data, made the fetch request, reset the form. That's it. Cool, thank you.